In July 2003, the city of Mosul, battle-scarred and brimming with tension, harbored an unassuming house with the worst tenants imaginable. Inside, two of Iraq's most infamous fugitives, Uday and Qusay Hussein, were laying low, hoping the US military would just, give up looking. Spoiler alert, they did not. The Hussein brothers had vanished after the fall of Baghdad like villains in a low-budget action movie. But the hunt for them was relentless. And when the US forces finally found their hideout, the brothers did what every overly dramatic movie villain does. They went out guns blazing. What followed was 6 hours of relentless gunfire, rocket strikes, and enough explosions to make Michael Bay nod approvingly. By sunset, the villa was ruins, and two of Saddam Hussein's most notorious heirs were officially out of the picture. The beginning of the end. Let's rewind to March 20th, 2003. The US stormed into Iraq with one mission: to kick Saddam Hussein off the throne. Within weeks, Baghdad was in American hands, the Iraqi government collapsed, and Saddam was pulling a disappearing act that would put Houdini to shame. His sons, Uday and Qusay, followed suit, vanishing into thin air, though their reputations remained as loud as ever. Uday, the loose cannon. Born in 1964, Uday Hussein was Saddam's eldest son and, for a while, considered heir to the dictatorship. Unfortunately, his leadership skills were, oh yes, atrocious. If there was a handbook on how to be a decent human, Uday never skimmed a single page. His resume included brutal torture, murder, and unspeakable crimes, with a particular flair for terrorizing athletes and doing nasty things to women. In 1988, Uday decided to spice up a party by clubbing a man to death. That man just so happened to be Saddam's personal valet. Even Saddam, not exactly known for his compassion, thought Uday had gone too far. Instead of grounding him, because that clearly wouldn't work, Saddam distanced himself, probably rethinking his parenting choices. Still, Uday had power. He ran Iraq's Olympic Committee, controlled the media, and lived like a king. The people lived in fear, but Uday, he enjoyed himself thoroughly, until fate caught up with him. Qusay, the quiet but deadly one, Qusay. Hussein, born in 1966, wasn't as flashy as his brother, but he had something far more dangerous: actual power. While Uday was off being the poster child for unchecked rage, Qusay was running Iraq's intelligence services, secret police, and military operations. In 1991, after the Gulf War, uprisings threatened Saddam's rule. Who did he call? Qusay, of course. Under Qusay's leadership, thousands of Iraqis were killed in a ruthless crackdown, proving that sometimes the quiet ones are the ones to really watch out for. By 2003, Qusay was widely considered to be Saddam's true successor, if only fate had played in his favor. The deck of doom. With Baghdad fallen, the US was eager to track down Saddam's closest allies. But how do you keep tabs on dozens of high-profile targets? Well, apparently, playing cards. The US military literally turned the manhunt into a deck, featuring Iraq's most wanted individuals. Saddam was the ace of spades, Uday the ace of hearts, Qusay the ace of clubs. The reward for turning in the brothers, $30 million. That's right, $15 million each for two of the worst roommates Mosul had ever seen. Flyers rained from the sky, plastering their faces everywhere. Iraqi citizens were promised life-changing riches if they gave them up, but despite the massive reward, the brothers remained ghosts, slipping through every raid. The Great Escape, or not American troops, scoured Iraq, kicking down doors, questioning anyone remotely suspicious, and turning cities upside down. Mosques, homes, hideouts, nothing was off limits. Yet somehow, Uday and Qusay were nowhere to be found. Some guessed they had escaped to Syria. Others believed they were living underground, hopping from safe house to safe house like the world's most paranoid Airbnb customers. Ultimately, they headed north, settling in Mosul, a city full of Saddam loyalists who weren't exactly eager to help the US invasion. For months, the the brothers bounced between safe houses, their locations known only to trusted allies, businessmen, former government officials, and die-hard regime supporters. Eventually, they found sanctuary in the villa of Nawaf al-Zaidan, a businessman with deep connections to Saddam's inner circle. The house was large but inconspicuous, nestled in a middle-class Mosul neighborhood. Nothing flashy, nothing suspicious. But inside, Iraq's most wanted fugitives were waiting, watching, and hoping the US wouldn't find them. Qusay also had a special guest, his 14-year-old son, Mustafa. The quiet boy never left his father's side, following him like a shadow. Unfortunately, he would soon find himself caught in the violent fate awaiting the Hussein dynasty. The grand finale. The stage was set. The US forces had zero patience, and the Hussein brothers had nowhere left to run. What followed was a battle so intense, so explosive, it turned a once peaceful villa into a war zone. And just like that, the game of hide-and-seek was officially over. Nobody knows exactly why he brought the kid along. Maybe for protection, maybe for companionship, or maybe because he couldn't quite shake the dad guilt of saying, "Sorry kiddo, no room in the hideout, go play outside." Either way, dragging a child into a life-or-death game of survival was like bringing a goldfish to a poker tournament. Confusing, risky, and bound to complicate things. By mid-July 2003, the pressure was rising faster than bad fashion trends. US forces were scouring Iraq like determined bounty hunters, and the reward money had started looking less like a theoretical sum and more like a life-changing jackpot. Nawaf al-Zaidan, the host of this not-so-cozy hideaway, began to have second thoughts. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was pragmatism, or maybe, just maybe, the scent of crisp dollar bills was making him reconsider his loyalty faster than you can say, early retirement. Whatever was stirring in his mind, he made a call that would flip the script. On July 21st, Nawaf reached out to American forces through an intermediary, casually dropping one of the most valuable pieces of intel in modern history. Uday and Qusay Hussein weren't just out there plotting their next move, they were lounging in his villa. And Nawaf, ever the meticulous informant, didn't just hint at their whereabouts. No, he delivered their exact coordinates, a fully detailed house description, and practically included an invitation that said, "Come on over, they're definitely home." And just to ensure he got the VIP treatment, he made it crystal clear he wanted full protection and, naturally, all that shiny reward money. At first, the Americans weren't biting. They'd been led down too many dead-end trails before, with informants promising golden intel that turned out to be about as useful as a map drawn by a toddler. But this time, this tip felt different. The details lined up. Nawaf had history with the regime, which made it all seem plausible, and his sheer confidence screamed, "I wouldn't be risking everything if I weren't absolutely sure." A US team was quickly dispatched to Mosul, creeping around the neighborhood like undercover detectives in a spy film. They scouted the villa from a distance, gathering every scrap of intelligence available. By nightfall, they were practically certain. The Hussein brothers were in there, possibly debating whether this was going to end like an action movie or a tragic play. Once confirmed, the American command didn't hesitate. This wasn't the time for polite discussions or formal arrests. It was a full-scale military operation. The plan? Roll in fast, surround the house, and demand surrender. If the brothers played nice, they'd live. If not, well, let's just say renovations were about to begin, courtesy of the US Armed Forces. At 10 a.m. on July 22nd, the sleepy streets of Al-Falah were about to experience a wake-up call like no other. The Americans arrived with absolute precision, deploying their most elite units, including Delta Force Commandos, aka Professional Party Crashers, and the lightning-fast 101st Airborne Division. Tanks and armored vehicles locked down the perimeter, helicopters hovered above like impatient landlords, and snipers took their positions, ready to turn rooftops into vantage points. Through loudspeakers, they called out in Arabic, offering the brothers a straightforward deal. Come outside, hands up, and nobody gets hurt. It was standard protocol, an attempt at diplomacy before things got explosive. The response? Silence. Then, as if on cue, the villa erupted. Bullets tore through windows and walls, turning the house into an impromptu shooting gallery. The Americans wasted no time responding, dodging for cover while returning fire. Clearly, Uday and Qusay had no plans to go quietly. Inside, the brothers had transformed the upper floors into a fortified stronghold, stocked with rifles, grenades, and enough ammo to make an arms dealer jealous. Oh, and in the ultimate family bonding activity gone wrong, Qusay's teenage son, Mustafa, was also in the mix, fully armed, because apparently this was a no-quit battle for everyone involved. What was supposed to be a swift operation had turned into an all-out firefight. US forces unloaded machine guns, launched grenades, and attempted to storm the villa, but each time they got close, they were met with a hailstorm of gunfire, fierce enough to make even the most experienced soldiers take a step back. After an hour of relentless resistance, the commanders realized subtlety wasn't going to cut it. They needed heavy firepower, ASAP. Enter the Apaches, helicopters designed specifically to turn stubborn hideouts into modern ruins. One locked onto the second floor and fired a Hellfire missile, sealing the fate of the battle, with a bang so massive it could be seen for miles. And just like that, the war room inside the villa turned into history. The house was doomed from the start. The second floor collapsed like a poorly made sandwich. But did that slow down the gunmen? Absolutely not. They held on like stubborn weeds in a garden, firing relentlessly, as if sheer determination could defy military-grade explosives. These weren't amateurs. They moved with purpose, hopping from room to room, ducking behind furniture like seasoned veterans of urban warfare. Then came the next Hellfire missile, zeroing in on the roof, because when the first hit doesn't work, why not go full demolition mode? The explosion was spectacular, sending debris flying in every direction, but, shockingly, the house still wasn't silent. The fight raged on, bullets dancing through the air like unwelcome party confetti. For the American troops, this was turning into a nightmare. Not only was the resistance unrelenting, but now their own injuries were mounting. Soldiers took hits, some were struck by gunfire from windows, others were caught in the chaos of grenades and flying concrete, as the relentless barrage of bullets and rockets tore into the building. A few had to crawl their way to safety under the unforgiving rain of enemy fire, teammates yanking the wounded out like some high-stakes rescue mission straight out of an action thriller. Medics worked with impressive speed, patching up injuries behind armored vehicles and under cover, barely a step ahead of disaster. Yet, despite the pandemonium, the operation had to continue. Reinforcements stormed in, commanders barking orders, knowing this had to end soon, but not at the cost of recklessness. 6 brutal hours crawled by, the kind of battle that would leave an imprint on history. At last, just after 4 p.m., the gunfire sputtered out, silence creeping in like an unwelcome guest. But silence didn't mean safety. By 5 p.m., with the threat finally neutralized, American troops moved in. What greeted them was destruction, absolute and undeniable. The house barely stood, a husk of its former self, reduced to rubble and shadows. Soldiers treaded carefully, wary of booby traps and hidden dangers. They picked through the wreckage with precision, and soon enough, they found what they were looking for: 4 bodies amidst the ruins of the second and third floors. 2 adult males, 1 teenage boy, and another man, presumably a bodyguard, all killed in the fight. One of the adults had taken a clean shot to the head, likely a brutal send-off in the final moments of battle. The teenager, meanwhile, had been riddled with bullets, a sobering sight amidst the carnage. The troops wasted no time. Photographs were taken, the images rushed to intelligence officers. This was a high-value target operation. Certainty was critical. Experts scrutinized the bodies, analyzing scars, dental records, past injuries, and even X-rays. Every detail had to match. Special agents went the extra mile, comparing facial features and bone structure with meticulous precision. Uday had a limp, a souvenir from an assassination attempt gone wrong, plus metal rods embedded in his leg. Qusay had his own collection of documented injuries. After hours of careful comparison, the results came in. It was official. The 2 adult males were Uday and Qusay Hussein. The teenage boy, Qusay's son, Mustafa. The 4th man was their loyal bodyguard, who had clearly stuck with them to the bitter end. By July 24, 2003, the news was ready to be delivered to the world. American military officials held a press conference, dropping the bombshell that would echo through Iraq. And just to silence conspiracy theories before they could gain traction, they released graphic photographs, an unprecedented move that stirred immediate controversy. Some officials thought it was necessary, proof to crush any lingering doubts and send a message to Saddam's supporters that their reign was crumbling. Others found it too morbid, too harsh. But Iraq reacted instantly. In Baghdad and the south, people cheered. Rifle shots rang through the air in celebration. Some wept, not from sadness, but from sheer relief. To them, this was the beginning of the end of Saddam's brutal rule. But not everyone was convinced. Up north, anger bubbled over. Some refused to believe the news, clinging to conspiracy theories like lifelines in a storm. Whispers spread, claims that the photos were staged, that the real Uday and Qusay had body doubles who had taken the fall. Skepticism ran rampant, but the mounting forensic evidence slowly smothered the doubt. Once the bodies were officially identified, the US military took no chances with the burial. They transported the remains to Baghdad, making sure no grand ceremonies or martyr-worthy tributes could take place. Their final resting place, Tikrit, the Hussein family burial site, but in an unmarked grave with tight security. No mourning crowds, no speeches, no banners, just silent, undisclosed burials. As Iraq processed this seismic event, one man quietly walked away from it all. His life changed forever. Nawaf al-Zaidan, the informant who had handed over Saddam's sons. Just days after the raid, he was discreetly paid the full $30 million bounty, a hefty sum for a tip that forever altered history. He became one of the most highly paid informants in modern history. To ensure his safety, US intelligence swiftly arranged for him and his family to leave Iraq for good. His identity was never officially disclosed by the US military, though Iraqi sources eventually leaked his name. What happened to him afterward remains a mystery. Some believe he settled in Europe or the Gulf region, adopting a new identity and building a fresh life. Others speculate that he vanished entirely, never to resurface. Following the raid, the villa was reduced to ruins. Walls were blown apart, and thick black smoke stained nearby buildings. Residents later recalled how the battle rattled their homes. Some suffered injuries from flying debris, but no civilians lost their lives. According to the US military, every effort was made to minimize harm to bystanders. However, once gunfire erupted, they had no option but to retaliate with force. The deaths of Uday and Qusay marked a major victory for the US military. Their elimination proved that even the most influential figures in Saddam's regime were not beyond reach. The event also sparked hope among Iraqis, who had endured decades of fear and oppression. Yet the conflict was far from over. Just months later, in December 2003, US forces apprehended Saddam Hussein himself, finding him hidden in a hole near Tikrit, an event that became another defining moment in the war. Despite the downfall of Saddam's sons, Iraq remained plagued by violence. A powerful insurgency emerged, and American troops faced frequent attacks. Still, for many Iraqis, the demise of Uday and Qusay signified the end of a terrifying chapter in their history.